Okay, we're going to be starting my series I enjoy doing because it drives Loretta crazy, my series on codependency. So I got to do this one again. I'm going to start off by doing a reading from The Language of Letting Go, which is the daily meditation book for codependency. And I picked a reading from October 16th. Our relationship with ourselves is the most important relationship we need to maintain. The quality of that relationship will determine the quality of all of our other relationships. We can tell ourselves how we feel and accept our feelings, then we can tell others. When we accept what we want and need, we'll be able to have our wants and needs met. When we can accept what we think and believe and accept what's important to us, we can relay this to others. We learn to chuckle at ourselves, be ready to laugh with others. We have learned to trust ourselves. We will be trustworthy and ready to trust. Be grateful for who we are. We'll have achieved self-love. We have achieved self-love and accepting our wants and needs. We're ready to give and to receive love. Today, I will focus on having a good and healthy relationship with myself. I wanted to share that because in doing the series on codependency is the core root or the foundation of all addictions. And I have found over the years how important this process is. And that's why I want to spend the time for the next 9 weeks going through the whole process of codependency with you. But today, I just want to identify what codependency is and some of the traits and characteristics. But to do this, I'm going to go back in history just for a couple of minutes and give you where a lot of this came from. I want to go back to 1935. We had the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when the early founders put the program together, they basically were acknowledging they were dealing with a problem of alcohol. During that period of time, Bill W.'s wife, Lois, decided because all these men were hanging around their house to invite their wives and their girlfriends into the kitchen, made a pot of coffee, and started the program back then called Al-Anon. Now, back then, codependency or Al-Anon was just basically geared towards the wives or the relatives or friends of alcoholics. What we talked about was alcoholism. Things kind of stayed the same through the 50s, into the 60s, early 60s, because back then we referred to it as the generation where we kind of put the blinders on, didn't look at too much. A lot of stuff was hidden. Then in the 60s into the 70s, we had a revolution in our society. It's almost like everything that was in the closet came out of the closet. And all of a sudden, everything broke loose. Be part of history for a long time. Finally, around 1978, a lady wrote a book. A book was entitled Adult Children of Alcoholics. Now, when I read that book, it kind of hit me hard because I really believed that she lived in my house. And it was the traits and characteristics of an adult child of an alcoholic. And the amazing part about it was, my mother was an addict in my family, but basically those things pertained to me. And finally, in the middle 80s, two ladies, Pia Melody and Melody Beatty, put together two books, Codependent No More, and Facing Codependency. And for the first time, we looked at addiction, we looked at behavior instead of substance. And so a simple definition of codependency that came from that is any person, place, or thing that you have built a dependency on, means you cannot function without it, that makes your life unmanageable or makes your life crazy. That could be a person, that could be a substance, that could be a family member, that could be a workplace. It's amazing how anything in our life becomes so dependent on that it creates unmanageability. And so I realized today, finally, we're looking at something called the addictive personality or the addicted person. And all of us can fit into this category because no matter what dysfunctionality it came out of, these traits can apply. That's why I've said over and over again, and I work with addicts a lot. And if addicts don't go back and look at their roots and their foundations and where this stuff comes from, that's why addiction also has many faces. See, we always kind of looked at addiction as drugs and alcohol, but addiction today has many, many, many faces. So I can make anything into a dependency, anything into an addiction. It's about control and it's about fear. Now, let me share this with you. At the moment of your birth, when you came into this world, whether you realize it or not, you actually join 5 families. By the way, you don't have a choice. You join them automatically. Your family of origin or your blood family, your neighborhood, your cultural or your environment family. Also under that, I put a time family too, because those of us who were born way back in the 40s went through experiences that many people today don't go through. We also experienced the religious family system. I'm sure when I was 1 month old, I would jump up and down in my crib and say, please baptize me Catholic. My parents took me, placed me into their belief system, which really wasn't mine, it was theirs. But then it became my normal. We also enter into basically a peer family. And kids are tough on kids. And finally, a society family. That society family, especially today, affects us in very powerful ways. And as a result, we are bombarded by thousands of messages today. Now, because we join all these family systems, when I'm born, I have natural expectations. I'm a baby. And as a baby, I want to be taken care of. So what do? I look towards the family systems to give me my basic fundamental spiritual foundations for life. Remember, when I use the word spiritual, I'm not talking about religion. The word spiritual means to come to a knowledge of myself as a person. It's getting in touch with my personal spirit. So as a baby, I expect these family systems we just talked about to give my basic fundamental spiritual needs so I can grow. And they are 5. I have a need for them to protect me and keep me safe. Safety is the key to everything. You can't do any growing unless you feel safe. I expect them to love me unconditionally. Unconditional love, no matter what. I expect them to give me the basics of life: food, shelter, clothing, the fundamentals, the basics. I expect them to teach me life skills. For example, how to socialize, how to play, how to interact with other human beings, teach me intimacy so I can trust and get bonded and be connected to people. These are expectations of mine. Finally, I expect them to teach me my history. Who am I? Where do I come from? What's my history? Your history is your most powerful teacher. And I expect my family systems to give me a sense of my history. Now, the thing I want to bring out to you is if those basic needs aren't met when you're a child, then you will search for them for the rest of your life. Now, let me just do this. I want to go into theory for a couple of minutes, okay? I got to do theory because I know Wayne needs theory, so I got to do theory, not a problem. But there's a basic fundamental theory of how we're supposed to live life. I love it. If you take Psychology 102, you'll learn it. Life is supposed to go in this wonderful diagram. From ages 0 to 10 are referred to as the foundation years. From 11 to about 14 are called the years of confusion or transition. Most of us remember those years. We had no idea who we were. Our hormones were all over the place. We were confused as hell. And then from 14 to about 19 are referred to as the transition years, or I refer to them as the war zone, teenage years. Believe it or not, you're supposed to engage in a war with your family system. It's called the breaking away. Then the books teach us from 21 till about 26, you're supposed to become a totally independent person. Nobody told me till I was in my 40s, but I'll tell you, we'll talk about that later. But the bottom line was, by the time you're 26 years old, you're supposed to be a mature adult. And that goes from 26 to 120, the years of commitment. Now, the process I believe in, but the ages, don't worry too much about them. We all go through this process when we're ready to go through it, and many of us don't go through it till later on in life. For example, the first 10 years are the foundations. I truly believe very deeply, and I said, oh, this is history and everything else. By the time you are 10 years old, and most psychologists say by the time you're 7, but in addiction field, we're generous, we give you till 10. By the time you're 10 years old, all your traits, all your characteristics, all your foundations have been formed. In short, you're done. And then it takes only 80 years to work on them. But the bottom line is we pick up our traits and characteristics in those foundation years. They are the years in which we are looking for all those spiritual foundations I talked about earlier. Now, if we don't get them met, if you're normal as a child, I'm using mine now. If you're normal as a child, where things such as fear, guilt, worry. I joke a lot, I say I'm Italian. I got the PhD on that when I was born. But the bottom line is, if these become your normal, if you weren't given good foundations for life, and so as a result, basically, you went through your childhood confused, or in my case, I never really had a childhood. And so as a result, literally, you develop patterns and techniques to be able to survive life instead of living life. When it comes to codependency, I divide them into 3 categories. We either become isolators, these are survival techniques, or codependent techniques, or we become fantasizers, and many of us win the jackpot and become caretakers. Now, isolators are normally kids that grew up in homes. I call them the children of fear. These are homes that are empty, that are lonely. These are the kids that never get a lot of love. So they're empty, they're scared, they're afraid. When they become adults, they literally migrate towards certain behavior characteristics that will get them and function through life. Because like I said to you before, if you don't get your needs met, you're now going to get them met someplace else. We're always searching for a family or someplace to belong to. And so as a result, very many times, these are individuals that will migrate towards an addiction we don't talk about too much, called institutional addiction. And now we're going to talk later on, is now a new addiction that's on the scene called technology addiction. It's totally amazing. You see, slowly but surely, I don't know who I am. So I now become dependent on institutions or technology to tell me who I am, to tell me what I'm all about, to tell me where I'm going. And the bottom line is I'm empty, I'm lonely, I'm scared. I don't know what I'm doing. And so what I do is I learn to isolate and hide. Now I can hide in an institution and I can hide in a cell phone. There's plenty of great hiding places. And today they become greater and greater. So as a result, then I literally don't really know who I am. I want everybody else to tell me who I am. And so as a result, for example, I'm empty and lonely. So what do? I find me a therapist, take the sucker hostage. Remember that movie, What About Bob? It's an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, you should. And basically, as a therapist, not allowed to take a vacation because I expect you to always be there for me. If I really get sick, you put me into an institution. We have many different types of institutions. And as a result, it becomes my normal. It's the family. But then when I have to get discharged, I get depressed. And I find the way back. I'll give you a good example of this. I was a prison chaplain for 9 years. And we have what we refer to at the county jail, lifers. Now, old man Joe M., I'll never forget this, would get served 90 days in the county jail. He loved it there. He was a trustee. He would mop the floors, work in the kitchen, never really was in a cell. He had privileges because everybody knew him. When he got out 90 days later, they had to release him. He'd go on Atlantic Avenue in Atlantic City, throw a brick through a window at nighttime in the store. The alarm would go off. He'd sit there and wait for the police. Police would come. He'd get 90 more days in the county jail. So finally, one of the police officers said to him one day, he said, Joe, when you get out next time, do me a favor. No bricks through windows. Come and see me. Then just take your hand, slap me on the face once, and I'll get you 360 days in the county jail. You won't have to go in and out anymore. But see, he lived there. That was his family. And so many people find that. We see them here at Starting Point. We call them professional patients. People that go from one institution to another institution just for a place to belong. And it's understandable. Loneliness can really do a number on people. The other addiction that comes onto this is drugs and alcohol. Isolated drug addicts and alcoholics. We are individuals that do all of our drugging, all of our drinking, behind closed doors, in secret, because on the outside we appear to be all together. We refer to as functional addicts. These are the addicts who show up for work every day. They smile, but deep down inside they're empty and they're lonely. So I can use a substance to take away that loneliness, that emptiness, to hide. The other one is relationship addictions. I'm empty, I'm lonely. So the first person that comes along that treats me nice, I'm taking the sucker home. Even if they don't want to go, they're going to go home with me anyway. There's an old saying, you heard this before. If you truly love someone, let them go. If they're supposed to come back, they'll come back. Addicts don't believe that. See, our mantra is, if you truly love someone, follow them and stalk them. If they try to get away, kill them. A couple control issues there. But I can so easily, on my emotional system, I can really make somebody else into a drug. And I can hold on. There's that control, that fear, the fear of abandonment, the fear of loneliness. All these things come under isolation. The other one is workaholism. We don't talk too much about all these things. I can work at the same job and do the exact same thing every day till 10 years after I'm dead. I don't even know when the undertaker comes and picks me up. The bottom line is I'm in a ritual. I hide in my job. If you ask me who I am, I tell you what I do. So many people hide in their jobs. And then when they lose a job or change comes into place, they get scared. You saw that back when computers came into place. I've been doing it this way for 25 years. Don't bring these newfangled things into my life. I get scared, I get afraid. The other one that comes onto this is the eating disorder addiction of anorexia. I'm empty, I'm lonely, I don't want to grow up. So I starve myself, shut myself down, then somebody always has to take care of me. I revert back to my childhood. I want to be taken care of all the time. Empty, lonely, and scared. The second area is fantasy addicts. These are individuals that grow up in homes and environments where basically they've experienced a lot of trauma. These are the kids that were sexually abused, the kids that come out of homes they're embarrassed by, mental health issues. These are the kids that never want to take anybody home. So for survival purposes, they're embarrassed. at an early age, they create a fantasy. And they actually believe their own fantasy. The fantasy then becomes their reality. And as a result, then, they literally isolate, they hide in their fantasy. Now, don't get me wrong, nothing against fantasy, as long as you know it's a fantasy. When you think your fantasy is reality, you're in trouble. Many times, fantasies that come under drugs and alcohol, these are the unmanageable drug addicts and alcoholics, but if you confront them, they'll say, not me, I don't have a problem, everybody else does, I don't. They blame a lot of people, put a lot of weight on everybody else, because I don't want to look at me or deal with me. The bottom line is always the same. I don't want to look at myself, so I can literally blame somebody else, even though my life is totally unmanageable and totally crazy. But see, unmanageability is normal to me because I grew up in it. So craziness is always part of my journey. Under this also comes addictions such as the fantasy addictions, sex, gambling, money, power addictions, where enough is never enough, compulsive shoplifting, compulsive spending. All these things are ways in which I live in a make-believe world or a fantasy world, because I avoid the reality of who I am and what I'm really all about, because I'm scared, I'm afraid. It's much easier to live in my fantasy than it is to live in reality. Sexual addiction is a big part of this, and I'll cover these in a lot more detail as I get into this. But the bottom line is, I have a tendency very many times to migrate towards, the clandestine. So what happens a lot of times is, even when it comes to relationships, very many times people with major issues, they're scared to death of relationships. So they love to be involved in relationships with people who are not available for relationships. It's called a fantasy relationship. If I can't have you, I want you. If you become available, get lost. See, I love the insanity. I love the craziness. I love the excitement. I love all the crazy stuff that goes with it. But I can't handle that word commitment. I can't handle that word reality. These are things that scare me all the time. So as a result, I have to avoid, I have to hide, I have to run. I got to stay away from stuff. And so these are ways of doing it. I can live in a fantasy world, a clandestine world. You saw this in pedophiles who actually live two different lives. I've experienced this in my own self. Being in the priesthood, I remember a priest friend of mine who I lived with for 6 years. Looked pretty normal to me, ran the youth programs and everything. He's serving time in state prison now as a pedophile. But again, secret lives, secret ways of living, scary. This goes into a lot of areas of addiction, even workaholism. These are individuals who work at jobs that are doomed to failure. I remember one time a lady came to visit me, and of course she brought her husband with her. I love when they bring the husbands who don't want to come. They have a ball and chain around their leg and they're dragging them in. Anyway, she said to me, I want you to explain something to this man. She called her husband, this man. She said, we have a trucking business. We have 2 trucks and he's the only employee. He starts screaming at her. I go to work 4:30 in the morning, come home 11 o'clock at night. I bring in over $2,800 a week. She brought the books with her. She said, but our expenses are $4,200 a week. They start screaming at her again. I don't know what the bitch does with the money. See, it's always somebody else. It's always blaming. It's avoiding. It's running away. That's part of the fantasy. Because once you start breaking my fantasy, I don't like you anymore. Because the fantasy world is a comfortable world for me. It's part of codependency. I can hide in that world. And the scary part about it is, it then becomes my normal. Other areas we look into are caretaking. Caretakers are the goody two-shoes kids. The kids that go from 3 to 43. These are the kids that high expectations are put on them. These are the kids that have to grow up real fast. These are the kids that never really have a normal childhood. These are the kids where very many times they're given adult responsibilities way before their time. You know, I can talk about this probably till midnight tonight if you want to stick around. You know, but the bottom line is, I realize more and more. I never really had a childhood because my mother ran my life for me. Literally, I lived my life where everybody else wanted me to be, those expectations. A lot of pressure can be put on kids at this age. What they don't understand is when you lose your childhood, you have a sense of that, you really have a lot of anger inside you. But that anger gets masked. So as a result, then, very many times caretakers migrate towards some certain addictions. For example, drugs and alcohol. They migrate towards drugs and alcohol, but these are the drug addicts that only use what I call the legal pushers. Doctors do everything legally. They become addicted to prescription pills. This is a real common disease among senior citizens. There's very many times I have a tendency to want to kind of embalm myself a little bit. I relate to this because I did this in my priesthood because I couldn't stop because of my insanity, my running around, my workaholism. I used to sedate myself with alcohol at nighttime in the secrecy of my room. Nobody really knew it. Everything was a secret. And so as a result, functional again, but doing it in the legal, nice way. And as a result, very many times, these are individuals who migrate towards work, towards functioning. You know, I joke about this a lot, but it's not a joke. But these are the people, the individuals, who when they grow up, love to perform, love to do things on the outside. I'll give you an example. If you want to make a lot of money, okay, Lanny, you want to make a lot of money, here's what you do. Start your own business. Now, if you need 15 workers, hire 3 caretakers. They'll do the work of 5 people, not a problem at all. But here's the rules. Caretakers have so much control issues, it's unbelievable. They have these rules. You must give me total control of the entire company. Don't even bother coming. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I'll work long hours. I'll stay overtime, but don't pay me, please. And bottom line is, I'll never be able to ask for my worth. If you have a snowstorm, don't worry, you'll never be closed because I never take a day off. Because I feel this obligation just to make this thing work perfectly, whatever it is, and function. And guys relate to this because I ran a parish, not even knowing how to run a parish. It was totally amazing. I didn't need any help, I can do it myself. I can do anything myself. It's a good way to hide and run from life. The amazing part about it is, the bottom line is, just stop in on Friday and pick up the money. But here's the rules again. Don't pay me too much. I get upset. We don't know our worth. I always use the example of my own life. Boy, there's a big one for me. In my own life, I remember, plenty of times getting phone calls and saying, did you come and do a workshop or do a training? I was asked to do a training at the VA hospital in Coatesville. Of course, they always ask you then, what's your fee? And I used to go, whatever you normally pay, that's fine. That was my outline. Did the workshop. When I was done, they gave me an envelope. And of course, I'm a good codependent. God forbid somebody sees me looking in the envelope. When I get in the car, I look, it's a check for $750. I said, oh my God, they must have made a mistake. Like an idiot, I went back in and asked the guy if they had made a mistake. The guy said, you said to give you the fee we normally give. That's what we normally give. It's yours, get out of here. The typical codependent. I felt guilty on the way home. Maybe I better donate some of it here, donate some there. God forbid you just enjoy it. It's yours. But see, we have this problem. By the way, I don't have that problem anymore because if you ask me my fee, I say check with my wife. I'm all set now, not a problem. You know, she'll definitely tell you my fee. But the bottom line is it's crazy. But see, again, we don't know how to do that because we feel like we feel guilty. We feel like we're doing something wrong. And that's why we feel over obligated to everything all the time. We don't even know how to take a vacation, caretakers. They always feel like they're being bad by taking time off. Scary. And that's why we're performers and perform very well. And as a result, then we also get very frustrated and very angry on the inside. When it comes to relationships, wow. We love to be involved in relationships with sickies. The sicker, the better. Bring me your sick and you're deprived and I will take care of them. See, I'm going to control them is what I'm really saying. And as a result, then literally, I'll take care of you, I'll fix you, don't worry. That's scary. So many times we have this. I told you this story so many times, but when my aunt was alive, I used to visit her over in Pennsauken. She was in a wheelchair. When I would visit her, the lady next door, older Italian lady, saw me coming. And I think she just enjoyed this. She would arrive, come in to have coffee with us. And she would sit there and tell us about her husband. I've been living with this bum for 43 years. He's a bum. He does nothing. I cook, I clean, I do this. He won't lift a finger for anything. And one day I said to her, why do you stay with him? She almost took my head off. Because I love him. Let me tell you a secret. That man never tried to do anything, she'd kill him. Here's all the control issues again. You see, I got to keep you down here so I can stay up here. All that manipulation, all that control stuff that goes along with that. It's scary. You come right down to it. And I can make that into another addiction. Fixing somebody, rescuing somebody, putting things together. A lady came to me one time. She says, you know, I love this guy. We're getting married, but God, you know, he's got this problem and that problem and the other problem. I said, well, once you get into counseling, not a worry, Vince. Once we get married, I'll straighten them out. So you're going to fix him once you get married. Then you'll have a paper to hold over his head. You're going to be his therapist, his counselor? Well, we do that. It's crazy. And so as a result, then very many times we migrate in this direction when it comes to relationships. I call them control ships or manipulation ships. They're not relationships. Scary. These are all traits, they're all characteristics of codependency. And the last one that comes under caretaking is compulsive overeating. I never understood this. I'm in recovery now from my eating disorder, but I know now I carried so much anger and so much rage inside of me. And most compulsive overeaters put a lot of weight around them. It's called insulation. So I can close off everything. I have to deal with stuff. I have so many fears, it's unbelievable. And as a result, then, I never realized how angry I was. And that anger ate me alive on the inside. But the outside, I still performed, I functioned, I got things done. But I never knew how to take care of myself. So I did that reading today. It's one of my favorite readings in the Codependency book. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. We beat ourselves up unmercifully. We're hard on ourselves. We don't think we're worth it. And that's why I learned in my own life, in my own journey, that when I finally got in touch with some of these codependent characteristics and traits, and they're part of me, they'll be part of me till the day I die. My father taught me how to be a wonderful, fantastic codependent. Love my dad, one of the best people in my life. My dad's only problem was he did everything for everybody else, but never did a thing for himself his whole entire life. And I became my dad. It's amazing. He enabled my mother, and I enabled everybody. When I was in the priesthood, I went $60,000 in debt from giving money away to addicts. Addicts love me. I was a free handout. What can I tell you? I wasn't helping people. I was enabling and killing myself in the process. See, the bottom line is, deep down inside, what am I looking for? I'm looking for that sense of family. I'm looking for love. I'm looking to belong. I'm looking to be part of a family. And the bottom line is loneliness, emptiness, these things can create all kinds of behavior characteristics. But if you confront a caretaker or many of us, our response is always the same. I'm fine. I'm fine. Now be careful when you say the word fine, okay? Because translate the word, it means I am a frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional person. Congratulations, you're fine. The bottom line we have to work on, that's why I want to spend 9 weeks on this, because we have to get into the whole process of how this stuff builds and develops. So what I want to do is I want to spend a whole week just talking about what is normal. See, for codependents, we don't know what normal is. And so we keep trying to create these normals, but they're all based around control and fear. Talk about family systems, how they affect us. I'll take a look at, I'll hopefully help you do an inventory of your own family systems, where your traits, where your characteristics came from. In the third week, we'll talk about how to play and how to have fun. Most codependents don't know how to do that, myself included. Can't take time, it's wasting time to go play and have fun. We get better at it though, in recovery. And so we have to learn how to make time for ourselves. As a result, then we'll learn in the fourth session about codependency and relationships. Then we'll talk the roles of a codependent and how they play those roles. And then we'll spend another 4 weeks on the recovery process and how the recovery process works. We'll take you through the whole process of recovery. Because I really believe that codependency is the root, it is the foundation, it's the basics that affects all of us. And only until we actually take time to look at our history, to go back into our roots and our foundations, that we truly begin to learn and grow. Because these are really the foundation of what life really is all about. And I can tell you story after story, but I want to go back just for a couple of minutes. I got so excited when I got in touch with these traits and characteristics. And the bottom line is, if you want to, I know on our website, if you go to Vince's Corner and go way down to the bottom, there's certain documents there. And one of the documents is the traits and characteristics of a codependent. Take the test. I'm sure you'll pass. Because we all have these traits one way or another, because we all came from some form of dysfunctionality. And I find it interesting because we have Al-Anon. Then from Al-Anon, we went to a program called Adult Children of Alcoholics. Then in the 80s, we had a program called Adult Children of Dysfunctional Parents. There really was one then. And then we went into Codependency Anonymous. These are all about the same thing, though. You come right down to it. It's about each one of us learning to acknowledge our history, embrace it, learn from it, grow from it, and let it become our teacher. We can grow and learn from it. My mom and dad were my first teachers. My neighborhood was my first teachers. We'll talk more about that. But you learn traits, you learn characteristics. That's really what it's really all about. But you also learn after a while to lighten up, to celebrate and enjoy who you are, to enjoy life. Because the other problem with adult children and codependence, we take life very, very, very seriously. Give yourself a break, okay? And realize the fact that things don't always have to work a certain way. You gotta learn to let go of that control. So my prayer today is that we embrace these traits and characteristics, learn from them, and grow from them. Let us pray. God, we come before you today as a family. We come before you to celebrate and to honor who we are. We come before you to help us to look within on our journey, to acknowledge traits and characteristics of our life. Help us in a very beautiful and simple way to be open to your will and to realize that you are guiding us in all that we do. We pray and we ask this in your name. Amen. And now I'm going to ask that you unmute, and we're going to make a wonderful attempt now to do the serenity prayer together.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God's will, not mine, be done.